What do we mean by alignment, and what does it look like? First, as a business, we need to establish your business goals and objectives, which may have changed due to the economy. From there, as a company, you need to know the sales and marketing strategies and what the tactical executions will be. From here, we develop the roles in the organization structure and what supporting performance measures, which tie back to your business goals and will be a part of your sales compensation plan that you'll need. The end result will be a strong sales plan, which stems from this process. We're going to take a minute now to line these steps up for you. Business goals and objectives. You really want to identify the top 3 to 4 business goals from the corporate business plan. For each business goal, the sales strategies are then identified, which will determine how sales must contribute to achieve the company's objectives. The tactical execution requirements entail identifying sales activities required in the field to execute the sales strategies. You need to ensure that the sales methodologies and processes link back to the business goals of the organization. And when you look at the organizational structure and roles and responsibilities, once the requirements in the field are understood, the organization structure then becomes critical. This involves understanding the sales roles required based on the tactical activities which need to be executed in the field. So identifying job roles based on what stage your company is in is critical. Where your company is at in the product cycle is also very important. The amount you need to pay varies widely, and if you remain static in your pay as your company matures and your products mature, you are really wasting and throwing away your incentive dollars. You pay hunters more than account managers. And if you have reps doing both roles, make sure you are compensating more for the products or services you want to emphasize. If that is an issue, then consider splitting out the job into 2 separate roles. These are some of the typical roles that companies have: earnings, sales commissions. I'll read these because it might be a little bit hard for you to read out there. Lead generation and telesales, outside sales, account management, and customer service. Those are some of the eligible job roles. But you also have to consider all customer-facing roles as potentially being eligible for an incentive plan. So you might want to include it if you are willing to consider at least 15% of the target total compensation as an incentive. Compensation should be tied to buyer behavior and the decision-making process. The nature of selling and the required sales compensation approach is different in each quadrant. How do you reward them? So let's take a look at the transactional quadrant in the lower left-hand side. The characteristics of the T quadrant are typically that there's not much of a relationship being built between the customer and the prospect and the sales rep. There's not a lot of information exchanged going on. In order to make that decision, they're really collecting information on their own, and typically these prospects are only interested in price. Also, this might be a team selling situation. The approach here is to keep costs low and don't invest too much in the sales plan and the sales reps. The characteristics of the personal quadrant in the upper left really are based on relationships. The more control that a sales rep has of the buyer decisions, the more that you should pay them. This is typically an account manager role or a national sales manager role. It entails high levels of customer service, so the approach here might be to measure revenues and margins and compensate for growth and product mix. The characteristics of the lower right-hand quadrant, the knowledge quadrant, really involve complex sales requiring deep product knowledge. There's not a lot of time for a relationship, but the sales rep must have data to support a value proposition. Typically, this is an evangelical sale. The sales cycle is longer, and the products actually are most likely going to be newer to the marketplace. If you have an existing product, remember that you don't need as much information exchange. Other roles on incentive plans that might be in this quadrant might include a technical specialist or a sales engineer. The approach here is to focus on customer needs. You might measure close ratio, and you compensate for new customers. And finally, the partnership quadrant in the upper right side. This is typically the hunter role and the highest paid sales job. Most companies want their reps to be here. This is where the eagles gather. A key point here is that the more influence a sales rep has on the sale, the more that they should be paid. So here you're measuring performance versus plan. Also, you don't need to give them a very big base. Lower the base, but also the commissions will be pretty high. This is going to have a high total target compensation. To see it in commission dollars, the graph would look very similar to this, where the longer the timeline is and the more control a rep has, the higher they're paid. Once again, proving the adage, time is